Liam, welcome to the Easy Conversations podcast. Thank you for joining me today. I'm really looking forward to hearing about your story. There's quite a bit of intrigue there in terms of what you've gone through and how you were able to land in certain situations and claw yourself back out. But that's the adventure of a lifetime that we all must embark on. I believe we all go through it in different ways. And at the end of the day, we all learn from those opportunities. And I'm a firm believer in the hero's journey, where then I guess our goal should really be in terms of how can we share that wisdom with others and hopefully guide them on their journey as much as we can. But before we get into all of that, I do want to give you an opportunity to share with the listeners a little bit about yourself, what's brought you here, who you are, some of those things, so we can get a bit of context around who Liam is.
I guess probably like many of the people listening and watching, I'm what you call a success seeker, or have been.
Mm,
In other words, all my life I've been someone who's wanted to make the most out of life and not be
mm,
held back by problems, but really figure out how can I have a really exciting life, not just an average go out and do the same thing every day. I wanted to be rich and I wanted to be successful and happy and not have stress and problems. So
mm,
that's really been the driver for most of my life. But I was very fortunate to have a watershed moment, a catastrophe happened to me that took me from going down the wrong path to finding all of
mhm,
those things, succeeding in a lot of ways, becoming a multimillionaire and having a lot of freedom in my life, but
mhm,
really going down the wrong path in terms of true fulfillment, true purpose in life, and living what I thought was really to my highest potential rather than struggling with problems. So I was very fortunate to have this big thing happen to me that moved me from that path to really what I've discovered is a much easier and better path
mm,
to being the best version of who we are and to really living our lives the way we're supposed to live it, which is an exciting life, is without stress and problems and
mhm.
being dragged down all the time. So that's
Yeah.
really what's happened to me. And that's what I do now is share people really what I've learned, the difference between these two ways of trying to achieve what you want in your life and also tying in the biology and the science behind one is always a struggle and
Mhm.
another one isn't.
Yes, absolutely. And when you touch on successes can be fleeting and it's very subjective, right? And how do you define success? And I think as we go through these journeys and these experiences in life, you tend to realize that whatever definition of success you had was perhaps misleading or could have led you down a different path. So, how have you been able to then navigate your relationship with success and reframe it in a different way based on what you've gone through?
I guess the first thing I did, or one of the things I did, is to define and find out what success actually is.
Mhm,
Because what I realized, I'd always thought that, a bit like what you just said, that everybody has their own definition of success. But there is actually a scientific definition of success. And it's actually taught not only by all of science, but all of spirituality and religion as well. They all say there is a definition of success, and it's one thing, and that
mm,
is to be happy right now.
mm,
That is what success is. And we can talk about as we go along what biological success, how we're wired for success, if you like.
mhm,
But if you really
mhm,
think about it, any other definition you want to give of success, maybe you think it's being wealthy or being able to do what you want in your life or having freedom or not having problems or having great relationships or having all of those things. But whatever it is, whatever you think that to me is success, isn't it true that it's not actually success? What it is something that you think will make you feel happy.
mhm,
All of these other definitions, in other words, the only definition really is being and doing what makes you feel happy. That
mhm,
is success. And I think if we all really thought about that, we'd realize that there's something within us, something unique that we need
mm,
to find out what
Mhm.
makes us happy, what makes us truly the best that we can be, because
Mhm.
that is the definition of our own success, not
Mhm.
looking around and saying, they've got that and they're successful, so I want that. Success is an inside thing. It's a biological thing. And, that's one of the things I learned that really helped me get on the right track.
Mhm. Yeah, and what I'm hearing from you is, like you said, what a lot of spiritual practices teach or religious practices teach is around finding that sense of contentment in the present moment. And that can be very difficult for people, especially if they're not really content with themselves. They feel if I'm able to achieve whatever this definition of success is for me, I'll feel happy. And as you shared earlier, that achievement doesn't lead to fulfillment because now you can find another thing to chase. And it's almost that hedonic treadmill that people refer to because you're constantly chasing. And as soon as you get to that first milestone, you're like, there's another milestone. But when you're able to bring yourself to the present moment, that's all you can focus on. And that's where that sense of contentment can be so powerful. So when you touched on the whole notion of being wealthy and then you became that multimillionaire and you didn't feel that sense of fulfillment, what was that like? Because I think a lot of people have been there where they've set this goal feeling that they'll experience that contentment rather than noticing that it's always within us. We just need to look inward. What was that moment for you like when now you've become this multimillionaire, but something's missing?
Actually, I could relate it a little bit to my journey from where I was to where I got and what really caused the transformation for me.
Mm,
And I guess where it started, I remember the moment very specifically. And I was a millionaire. I had multiple businesses, and I was just in the process of completing my dream home.
mm,
And it wasn't quite finished, but it almost was. And part of my home, I remember, was I built a music room. I'd been a musician earlier in my life. So my
mhm,
dream was always to have my own businesses, to be a multimillionaire, and to have a magnificent home that I designed with my own music room that I could retreat to and enjoy and relax in. But I remember this day, and it was a beautiful sunny day, and I went into the music room and I sat down and I was looking out the windows, the big glass windows that looked out to the mountains, and we had our horses grazing in the field in front, and the sun was shining. And I thought, I should feel amazing right now. I
mhm,
should feel so happy and satisfied. I'm living my dreams.
mm,
But instead, I remember I felt absolutely terrible. I was so stressed. I was so unhappy. I was shaking with the stress. And I thought, what's going on? And I just had a blazing row with my wife, which I was having problems there, and the businesses weren't doing quite so well. But I remember thinking to myself, this is utterly crazy. Here I am. I've achieved all my dreams. I'm living my dream life. Why do I feel so awful? Why do I not feel, not only I don't feel happy, I feel the opposite. I feel stressed, frustrated, angry, and
mhm,
just, it was just the most awful feeling. And then I said, in this voice, whether it was a voice or something, said to me, Liam, maybe you should, what would be better? Perhaps give all of this up, get rid of everything,
mhm,
if it meant you didn't lose your soul. And I said,
mm,
in answer to that, I really would be prepared to give all of this up, have nothing in my life, if it meant I could find my soul, if it meant I could find what I've always been looking for, which is happiness and peace. And I don't understand why this isn't giving it to me, and why, no matter what I have, I've still got all these problems to face
mhm,
every day. As they say, you have to be careful what you ask for, because literally within a few weeks, that's exactly what happened to me. I lost
mm,
absolutely everything. And when I say everything, when I said to myself I'd be prepared to lose everything, I didn't realize what that really means and what it
right.
would feel like and what it would be like. Because I had to move from this wonderful house to having to sleep on the sofa in the living room of my mother's small apartment, and my elderly mother.
Mm,
And it was such a huge shift. And I had absolutely nothing rather than a few clothes on my back and possessions. All my businesses had gone, my marriage, the house, everything had collapsed. And it was worse than physically what was going on. It was mentally and emotionally what was going on within me, because I was at such a low point. I felt so stressed, and not only stressed, but confused. And I kept saying to myself two things. One, why has this happened to me? Because I'd always been a student of success as well as
Mhm.
learning how to make money. I used to go to lots of seminars, did all of the self-help, personal development workshops, and read all the books, and studied spirituality and meditation and other spiritual practices, and read all sorts of books, and did work on my subconscious mind and using
Mhm.
visualization and goal setting and affirmations and all of these things. And I said to myself, why has this happened to me? Because not only am I an expert on success, I know everything there is to know about how you're supposed to be in control of your life.
Yeah.
But also, this wasn't on my goals list. This wasn't in my plans. So I thought, why has this happened to me? I'm not a bad guy. I don't think that I've done anything too bad. I haven't been out there cheating people and embezzling money and stealing and doing anything to get my wealth. I did it in an honest way.
Mhm.
And the second thing I asked myself was, what do I do now? Because
Yeah.
nothing that I tried worked. So I really was completely at a loss to know what to do. And it was a very dark place. But the great thing was, that was the best thing that could happen, because what it really did was it forced me to try something different. And I
Mm.
did something that in any other situation, if I hadn't hit that rock bottom, I don't think I ever would have done it.
Mhm.
And that is, I stopped trying. I literally, some people call it letting go, but I completely just gave up. I said, I'm not going to try and figure out what to do anymore. My brain is exhausted. I have no clue. So I'm just going to give up, and I don't care what happens, literally.
Mhm.
And that was a
Yeah.
turning point. And many years later, I figured out what had happened, because after that, things started to show up. A
Yeah.
business showed up. Then another business showed up. A wonderful relationship showed up. Another business showed up. And before I knew it, I was traveling around the world, my own yacht, managing my businesses from anywhere in the world, and just really enjoying my life. And again, I was doing all these amazing things, but they were just falling into place. It was like
Mm.
dominoes. It was like, you call them luck or coincidence. I don't know why these things were happening to me, but they weren't the
Mhm.
result of me struggling and trying
Mhm.
to force things to happen. But the most important thing, the biggest difference, it wasn't about that I really was doing wonderful things like sailing around in my own yacht, and I had a motorhome for a while in New Zealand, and now I have a motorhome in Europe, and traveling around and being in this wonderful relationship. It wasn't all the stuff on the outside, it was how I was feeling on the inside.
Mhm.
And sometimes you get to that point and you just know something, you just
Yeah.
know within you. It's not that you, it's even a bit beyond emotion. You just know my life is really working. There's something at work here that's making all of this fall into place. And I don't need to worry about it. I don't need to get stressed.
Yeah.
It's always going to be like this. I just knew it. And it
Mhm.
just kept carrying on. So that's when I decided I now need to figure out what I'm doing differently,
Yeah.
because my results are so vastly different, not just on the outside, because things were working in a lot better way, but also on the inside, where I finally felt this release and really feeling like I'm actually doing what I'm here supposed to do in my life. And again, it's beyond thoughts, it's more of a feeling. So that's what I've really spent the rest of my time since, is
Yeah.
back engineering what I did, figured out what I do differently, and now this is what I share with other people.
Yeah, absolutely. I do want to come back to that acceptance piece and that shift after you lost everything, having that acceptance, and then rediscovering a lot of those things again. And as you touched on, it was more of a feeling rather than something you could really put it into words, right? There's also an interesting thing you touched on there from it reminded me of the Faustian kind of narrative that Goethe put together, where he doesn't sell his soul or makes that deal with Mephistopheles around selling the soul. What was that like for you? Because you said you wouldn't give up your soul. You'd be willing to give everything up, get everything else up. And essentially that's what happened. So you were almost tested in that way. Okay, so what does this mean now that I'm still here? I've lost everything. What's this sense of acceptance now that I can have? So help us walk, if you can walk us through that whole experience of what happened in those matter of weeks where you lost everything. What was going on?
A practical level, it's just literally that. For legal reasons, it's not really that interesting to get
Yeah.
into the details, but yeah, all of my businesses just collapsed and everything it just literally disintegrated. And I think often what happens, certainly was for me, when you look back, either back on an event or during an event, you can't understand what's happening.
Mm,
Things are like beyond your control. And you are just going, why is all this happening? And you're in such a state of confusion that you can't really even begin to analyze why things are happening the way they are. And in
mm,
fact, it turns out there isn't really a logical analysis on a micro level. This is one of the things I discovered about how we operate as human beings. So, and really it became a question of not why did I surrender, or if whatever those words are that you like to use, give up, let go. I had to, because there was
mm,
nothing else that I could think of to do. As I say,
mm,
I'd studied so much to do with the mind, the brain, life, success practices, but none of those had worked for me. So it was a case, fortunately, that I got to a point where I had no other option. I just had to
mm,
give up completely. And what I didn't realize at the time, and this is really what I've come to understand, is a lot of the time we have this idea about surrendering, giving up, and it just becomes to us this mental concept, and we try and explain it in spiritual terms and in emotional terms, if you like. We say to people, you have to just surrender, you have to give up. But unless you've had that physical experience of what that really is, it's
mhm,
very hard to share it with somebody else. But what I've discovered, this isn't just a spiritual concept. This is a biological principle of the way life works, and it can be
mhm,
explained in a scientific, biological, practical way, not only about what giving up actually is and what it means, but how you can do it without
mhm,
having to do what I did, which is to literally get to the absolute rock bottom and be forced to do it. And we
mhm,
hear about people who have great tragedies and overcome things. Perhaps they might be an alcoholic or a drug addict, or have some addictions, or they might just go through some bad experiences. But they all describe, if they use that experience positively, if they come out the other side, they do describe this moment, if you like,
mhm,
where something switches inside them. And it's very hard to describe, but what I've discovered, and I've been very grateful to discover, is how to explain it biologically, rather than just trying to explain it as a thought, as an idea, or as a feeling, because that's very hard to communicate to someone else so that they can know what to do to get the same result. But it turns out it's simply a case of using your brain in a different way and
mhm,
switching your brain state. And that is what will allow you not only just to let go, but to really see the results
mhm.
of doing that, which is your life moving ahead in a much different and better way.
Yeah, for sure. And I think a lot of people struggle with this whole notion of letting go or giving up because they feel like they're succumbing to the situation in front of them, right? But I think if you're to reframe it a little bit and you look at it more as by surrendering, I'm actually now focusing on the things that are within my control. So I have way more agency and I can actually influence more things than I think. And when we're resisting the ability to surrender, we're actually creating more issues for ourselves. So is that something you've also come to understand that, oh, if I focus on the things that are within my control, I have way more to influence than trying to just fight back?
Well, I think that's one way you could do it, but there's actually a simpler way that I've discovered, and it comes
Mm,
down to the laws of nature. Because just before we talk about this, if you think about when you drive a motor car, Now, a motor car is a machine, and you know what it's designed to do. It's designed to get you from where you are to where you want to go in a very predictable, mechanical, certain way. And your job is to just enjoy the ride. Now, would you say that driving a motor car, you're surrendering and letting go, or are you just driving the motor car the way it's supposed to be driven? So you're
Right.
not consciously trying to let go. You're not saying, I'm going to let go and allow the car to get me to where it wants to go. You just do it automatically because you know that's the way it works. And
Yeah.
so when you know how nature works, how nature is designed and how you're designed biologically, you don't need to fight and struggle with this idea of letting go or using your brain in a different way. You just do it naturally because you understand. And I think this is the fundamental blockage, if you like, for most people, is we've never been taught to understand how something works in a way that we become absolutely convinced and understand ourselves how it works. And so we rely on all these sort of a lot of concepts and we think, well, that sounds good, but we never really try it because it's not doesn't come from true understanding. It more comes from people saying we've got to have faith and believe and all those sorts of things. So I come from a biological I and certainly when I saw the different results I was getting, I wanted to find what worked, the reason why it worked, and the proof that was the
Mm.
way things worked. And it just pointed me more and more in the direction of biology and how nature works because we can think, do, want anything we like, but we're never going to override nature. So nature rules everything in our biological existence. Try and walk off a building with all of your intention and prayer and meditation and changing your beliefs and reprogramming your subconscious mind with the intention of going up, you're still going to fall down. You're still
Mhm.
governed by the law of gravity. So nature rules, and nature has rules, and it also has a rule for what I call success, which is how biologically we are designed to be successful and how we achieve that. And we achieve it through using these biological tools that we have, which predominantly are from our brain. Use it the
Mhm.
right way, you get the right results. Use it the wrong way, and you get the wrong results.
Yeah. No, for sure. I appreciate that. And I think there's an aspect of what you're sharing also is being one with nature when you're in that flow, right? And a lot of people call flow state, but I've come to appreciate it as just being a part of everything that's happening in nature and everything's unfolding in its own way. And often I think we get caught up in that blockage, as you said, when we're trying to resist it. But when we're actually in that surrender, things are going to happen as they're meant to happen. And then we can start experiencing a lot of positivity through that law of attraction that takes place. We actually invite all these things into our life. And if we were to, again, shift our perspective, that's what success can look like in that present moment. And being content and grateful for whatever you have in that present moment, because otherwise you lose sight of it. And that's where I think a lot of people get into trouble. And I've been there before too, where you're just trying to force things to happen. And unfortunately, it's tough when you're forcing it. I think it's just in your case too, as you shared, at some point there was that switch and all these things started to come back into your life and everything you had worked for started to materialize. I think that's beautiful. So, how do you then, for yourself, tie it back to spirituality? What does that look like for you? How have you been able to continue on that path? And I think for all of us, when we're on this journey, it is an everyday, I think, almost like an opportunity every day because we will be tested. We will have situations where we're probably losing sight of that connection that we've developed. So we have to constantly work at it. So with all of that considered, what has that been like for you now, being on the other side after going through all those experiences?
It's a much more natural way to live because it's not just natural spiritually, it's natural
Hmm.
biologically. One of the things we've forgotten, and no one's ever told us, is that all of biological life has one primary purpose. Everything living is wired, designed, and striving to do one thing. And any biological scientist and any spiritual teacher will tell you this. That one thing that we are part of nature, we are striving to achieve this as well, is where everything is striving with the primary purpose is to survive.
Hmm.
That is what nature is designed and wired to do. And every living thing is designed to give itself the greatest chance for survival by being its very best. So for humans, being our best doesn't just mean physically as good as we can be, so that we're stronger, we resist disease, all of those things. It also means mentally and emotionally and spiritually, because we have these dimensions as well. So on a biological level, we are designed to be happy, to be fulfilled, to be aware, to be our best, to be the best that we can be. And nature has provided something to ensure that happens, and that's a brain. I talk about the motor car. The brain is as simple to use, in fact, simpler than a motor car, because we're talking
Hmm.
about nature here. And the brain is your machine that's designed to ensure that you are the best that you can be in all areas so that you have the greatest chance of survival. Science has a word for this. We mentioned success earlier. What is success? The scientific definition of success, which everything in nature is adhering to apart from humans, we should be, but we're not. But all of nature is designed to be successful, and it's a state called, which is to be in a state science calls homeostasis.
Hmm.
Homeostasis means the optimum functioning of the organism. It's also called the flow state, as you say. And if you observe nature, everything is in a flow state. Every living
Hmm.
thing is experiencing itself, just being the best that it can be. It's not struggling. It's not suffering with problems.
Hmm.
So our goal or our biological purpose is to live in a state of homeostasis, to be the best that we can be. And our brain is designed to ensure that happens. But the problem is we have two parts of our brain. One part, we've actually got four parts. I have a four-part brain model, but two parts biologically. I'm not talking about some concept or like conscious mind, subconscious mind, anything like that. This is
Yeah.
four separate parts of your brain that have biological functions. One part is designed to keep you in homeostasis, designed to keep you in the flow, being the best that you can be, not dealing with stress and problems, but having everything in your life that makes you happy, fulfilled, productive, creative, being
Hmm.
your best. That's being in homeostasis, this part of the brain. But we have another part of the brain that keeps us out of homeostasis. And by our actions, behaviors, and what we don't realize, by the triggers, there are
Hmm.
triggers in our world, both external and internal, that either activate this, what I call the creative brain, or it activates what I call the survival brain. And the only problem that we all face, the only problem that 99% of people face, and I learned this the hard way, is that we're creating all of these triggers in our environment to keep us stuck in the wrong part of our brain.
Hmm.
So when we're trying to use that part of our brain to be happy, fulfilled, do the right things, be aware, it's just not going to happen. It's going to keep us stuck. It's not designed to keep us in homeostasis. It's designed for
Hmm.
something else. So really, this is so simple. And after all of the practices and things that I did, this is the only thing that's really worked, is to
Hmm.
identify what the triggers are that are triggering the wrong part of your brain and just eliminate them from your life. And you know what you need to do then? The easiest thing in the world, just go with the flow. And
Hmm.
you're going to find you do the right things happen in your life, it's inevitable because your brain is working for you. You're not working against your brain. But most people, unfortunately, that's exactly what they're doing. And they're wondering why they're stuck. And they're saying to themselves, why aren't I happy? What do I need to do? How can I get some more information? How can I get out of this place of struggle? But
Hmm.
they're triggering constantly a part of their brain that's just is going to keep them struggling. It's not the part that knows how to get them out of struggle. And that's all you need to do. This is really simple, actually.
Hmm.
But people don't know anything about this because we've never been taught it.
Yeah.
Apart from in the Bible, it teaches us there how to do it. But again, we've
Yeah.
never interpreted it the right way.
Yeah, for sure. And it's interesting as you were touching on the homeostasis aspect, what it requires us to really be as humans is be still, just to be. And I think we all struggle with being because we're constantly bombarding ourselves with stimulation. And to your point earlier, the whole idea of survival, where you look at our ancestors where they had significant threats and we don't have the same threats. So we've created threats for ourselves to constantly be in this chase or experiencing anxiety. Especially with technology now, we've just added more stressors into our life. So we can't often, we struggle to be in that state of homeostasis and just being. And I think you touched on earlier the whole idea of comparison too. With social media, that's come to the forefront. It's easier for us to just look at something and compare ourselves to it. And another form I was talking about, and I know you touched on the Bible, but I was having this conversation yesterday, and I think ultimately what people really struggle is you look at your pyramid, and whatever you put at the apex is something that you're going to strive for. And if it's worldly things, whether it's success in the material form, you're going to constantly struggle because that apex can change any given day. You can move it around. But when you come to, as you mentioned, Bible or spirituality or religion, you're ultimately the apex of that pyramid is your higher power. And when you're able to lean into that and follow along with that, then it's easier for you to have that sense of surrender and acceptance. And you're able to accept things as they come and you're able to be one with nature. Was that something that was missing early in your life? And is that something that's become more prominent in terms of having this connection with a higher power?
Well, I was brought up in a Christian, from birth in a Christian household, and I was a practicing Christian, and I
Mhm,
took it very seriously. I've also studied many other spiritual practices. I would meditate every day for many years, and was very open to studying other spiritual practices. But I think the biggest problem with all of this is that we just overthink this far too
mhm,
much, and we keep thinking, I need to do something else. I need to learn something else. I need to practice something or become good at something. And somehow there's going to be a technique or a method or an idea that's suddenly going to help improve my life. But we forget this is actually a natural process. All we've forgotten is how to live naturally. And the
mhm,
only thing that's stopping us from living naturally are the
mhm,
triggers that are triggering the wrong part of our brain. So it really is, it's a bit like you walk into your house one day and there's a crack on the wall in the living room, and you figure out how to fix a crack in a wall, and you buy all the stuff and get a lesson in how to fix it, and you put all that effort into repairing it, and you come home the next day and there's two cracks in the wall. And you spend all your effort trying to fix those, and then the next day there's 10 cracks in the wall. Ultimately, you have to say to yourself, what's causing the cracks?
mhm,
And me just running around trying to fix the surface is it's a bit of a stupid, futile. It's eventually, if you keep doing that, the house is going to fall down, isn't it?
mhm,
You need to look
mhm,
at the structure, and we need to look at our biological structure and understand how our brain works, how nature works, and start to learn how to use it in the way it's designed to be used. And then all of that other, and because it's natural, it doesn't take a lot of, you don't need to spend 10 years on a mountaintop meditating to do this. You just need to understand it. And then you think, ah, why have I done that the wrong way all this time? Now I understand I have been, I'll do it that way. And it works.
mhm,
And that's the biggest problem I have when I'm helping people with this and working with people one on one or through my coaching programs or even just in my presentations is people are trying to figure this out and overthink it and think, I need to learn something new. All you need to do is learn or really identify, and a lot of these we're not aware of. What are the triggers that are putting me in the wrong part of my brain? Eliminate those from my life. That's all. I don't need to figure out what to do. I don't even, one of the worst things you can do is try and figure out what you want. One of the worst things you can do is have goals. And people say, what? Everybody has goals. Isn't that the only way you achieve in life? It's not biologically or scientifically natural to
mhm,
have goals. We could talk a bit about why that is, if you like, but it's the reason why very few people achieve any goals. Most of the
mhm,
time, when I ask people, what percentage of your goals do you achieve? Is it 100%? If you are an expert on goal setting, like I I used to do lots of goal setting workshops and read books and had all my stuff planned out and knew how to set goals, but I achieved very few of them. And the accepted success rate on goals is between 2 and 3%.
Mm.
So we're all thinking everyone else is reaching their goals, and that's the way to be happy, is to know what you want. But here's the thing, you can never know what you want, or only very rarely. And the only way you'll ever find out what you want is through this, what I call your creative brain. That will choose to show you what you want, or it will choose not to show you what you want. Your role is not to know what you, or to try and find out what you want. Your role is to simply be in the flow of your life and allow
Mhm.
what you really want to appear in your life, your brain to make that happen. It's
Mhm.
very different. And
Yeah.
as I say, it's just so simple when you
Yeah,
get it.
absolutely. Yeah, for sure. And I do want to understand the whole goal piece because I think there is a place for goal setting, but it's a bit of an art rather than a science in terms of setting optimal goals. We often tend to do too much at once and then easily get discouraged. But I do want to understand from your perspective why the goal setting is often not the answer.
Well, cool perspective. What, one of the laws of nature, nature has had millions, if not billions of years to figure out the most efficient way to do things. It's had it's so nature, if we look at it, it's designed to ensure that everything is the best that it can be and it has the greatest chance for survival. Any problems along the way within the design of nature have all been ironed out to find the most efficient way and the best way to ensure survival. So when you really look at that, what you realize is that nature operates on this law of maximum efficiency, which means the maximum amount of result for the minimum amount of energy expended. And you can think of that, talking about our ancestry, maybe in the early days, we might not have been able to find food for a week. We still had to have enough energy to be able to go and get some more food. So we've designed, nature has designed all of these processes to make sure we get the maximum result for the minimum amount of energy and the most conservation of energy. So when you think about you being the best that you can be and having a life where that is designed with all of the things that you're supposed to have in it for you to be happy, fulfilled, feeling like you're being your best and being productive and creative, what's the best way for your brain to ensure that that happens? Now, if it was to tell you, first off, okay, so for me, now, Liam, here you are on your mother's couch, sofa, but in a few years' time, you're going to have your own yacht. You're going to be sailing around Europe. You're going to visit 15 countries. You're going to have 3 businesses that you manage remotely. You're going to have this wonderful partner who's far better than you've ever had, somebody you've ever had, and you're going to love your life. What would I have said then? I wouldn't have believed it. And for 2 reasons. The first one was I didn't think it was possible, because I'd be like, what, me sail a yacht? I have done a little bit of sailing, but so I wouldn't have believed it. And the second thing
Mhm.
is, I wouldn't have I wouldn't have known it was possible, I should say, is the first thing. The second thing, I wouldn't have even thought that was what I wanted. I didn't know that that's what I wanted. I didn't
Mhm.
know it's what would make me the best that I could be. So what would I have done if my brain had suddenly shown to me, this is your goal. Here, this is what you need. I would have doubted, questioned, and I wouldn't have taken action I wouldn't have done anything. That's not
Right.
biologically efficient. That's not moving me towards being there in the most efficient way. It's holding me back. All this analysis, thinking, worrying, trying trying to figure it out. So if my brain had come back and I'm not going to and said, I'm not going to show you your ultimate goal, but I'm going to show you the next 10 steps. What would I have done then? So it presented me with, this is the plan on what you need to do to get to where you think you should be, or where I think you
Mhm.
should be. Now I would have looked at that and gone, what would I have done? I would have analyzed it.
Yep.
Step number 3, that sounds a bit strange. Then what would happen? I don't, would that really, what would happen if step number 4 didn't happen? But if I did something there, well, it might not happen that way. What am I doing? Same thing. I'm not taking any action. I'm not moving forward in a flowing way to getting to where I'm supposed to be. I'm analyzing, I'm doubting, I'm doing all these things. So nature has designed it quite simply to get you to where you are supposed to be. Your creative brain does one thing, it tells you the very next step. And that comes down to this idea of being present, because when you're
Mhm.
present, all you're doing is the very next step. You're not thinking about where it's going, you're not thinking about what you should be doing, or questioning it, or doubting it, or any of those things, that's all biologically inefficient. The most inefficient thing for you is to get in the flow, just keep doing the next thing. And when you do, the next thing will show up. So that's got nothing to do with goals.
Mm-hmm.
And even in the Bible, it says, do not think about tomorrow. Tomorrow will take care of itself. Do not worry about what you shall eat, drink, and wear. They'll all be provided for you. It doesn't say you have to sit down and figure out what you want and then I'll give it to you, but you'll have to work hard to get it. It says, do not think about what you want. It will be provided for you. And that's the way we're naturally biologically designed. We're not designed to struggle and try and find what we want. We're designed to receive and experience what we want, what we really want. And that's goals just keep people stuck. And I know for myself and many successful people I've talked to, they've all said, what I've achieved in my life was nothing what was on my goals list. If I'd had a goals list, that would have limited me.
Mm-hmm.
And that would have sabotaged my success, because maybe I'd be going after something that wouldn't make me happy.
Right.
And then I'd put all that energy and effort into it. And is this all there is? And this isn't really what I thought it would be, or this isn't giving me what I thought. You don't know. So I hope that helps.
Yeah,
with the goal setting thing.
for sure. And I think what I'm also hearing is when you set those goals, you often become rigid too. So if you need to pivot, or if there's an opportunity to pivot, you may not necessarily take that on because you're so fixated on this goal, and you're just trying to follow that along. And as you were sharing that, it reminded me of an analogy. I was out on a hike with my friends last summer and climbing this mountain. It's pretty far up, and we keep looking up and we're all like, oh man, this is a long ways to go. But we just started to focus on, and one of us said, just one step in front of the other, right? And that's what we kept repeating until we got to the top. So that's what really life is, right? It's that one step in front of the other, not trying to get too lost in looking at what's ahead, further ahead. And
Yeah, I think
yeah,
there's a difference. Obviously, the mountaintop's there, and that's where you want to go. So you have a bit of a plan and get fit and learn how to climb a mountain. But
yeah,
that's a little bit different to a life goal, where you're sitting down saying to yourself, what do I want and what do I need to be happy?
mm-hmm.
And you're trying to figure it out. You'll never figure it out. You'll never figure out what you want or what your life should look like. And so many people I've worked with, it was the same for me. Your life turns out in a way completely differently to what you thought you might want, but you're so much happier as a result. That's the only place. It's to trust and not really trust, but understand and allow this other part of your brain to do its job. And one of the illustrations of this is, I often say to people, and maybe people listening or watching could think about this, is think about one of the most significant things that happened to you in your life, which is going to be probably meeting the person that you ended up marrying and having a family with and having your life with. Now, when you think about what happened then, is it was an event that completely changed your life. But the day before that you met them, did you sit down, get out your piece of paper and say, tomorrow, and write down, tomorrow I am going to meet this person who I'm going to marry, and we're going to live together, and we're going to have this many children. This is going to be all their qualities and characteristics. Tomorrow my life changes, and that's what's going to happen. That's not whatever happens. They come along out of the blue, don't they? Unexpectedly. You think that wasn't on my goals list. It might have been on your goals list to have a partner or have a marriage or whatever, but not that in that way. And so why is it that the most significant things happen when we're busy trying to make our life happen, when the really important things seem to be fluke events or beyond our control? But there's this other part of our brain at work. There is another part of us at work that is far more powerful and is constricted and limited when we're trying to figure it all out through our thoughts and trying to see what we want and spend all our time making plans. You'll do the right thing at the right time, because that's natural, that's biological, that's the way we're designed. But you just have to allow yourself to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And what are your thoughts around where society has ended up today, where We've touched on the whole comparison piece. And again, our ability to be connected digitally has its benefits, but then there's also that downside of comparing ourselves and trying to set goals for ourselves that are someone else's goals, and wanting to be like someone else, or trying to have that success that other people have that you may look up to, or you might feel like, oh, if I have what that person has, I'll be happy as well. What are your thoughts around that, and how can people shift away from that comparison mindset?
I think the thing to understand, as you say, social media, it's like absolutely everything in this world. It's absolutely perfect. And it's not what it is, it's how we use it. And how we use it depends on which part of our brain we're using when we're using it. Because I talk all this a lot, I've been talking a lot about triggers. What's
Hmm.
triggering the wrong part of your brain? And the thing that triggers the wrong part of your brain is subconscious fears. And maybe we haven't got time to go into too much detail about this, but this is the core problem. We have built into us from the day we were born all of these irrational and subconscious fears, things that we're not aware of. But when those fears are triggered, that is what activates, it's what shuts down this creative part of your brain, and it activates through your feelings. It biologically activates the survival brain, this stuck part of your brain. So all you need to do is to recognize and start to recognize what are the triggers that are causing me to feel fear, causing my brain to feel fear, stress, worry, anxiety, frustration, anger. These are all signs from your brain to activate the survival part. And one of the triggers is, of course, comparing yourself to other people through social media, the one you mentioned. But anything that makes you feel bad, so whether it's comparing yourself to someone else, hearing something on the news that doesn't, the latest disaster or threat of disaster, or if that makes you feel bad, if it's a conversation that you're having with somebody about a subject that doesn't make you feel good. So you've got to become very aware, and this is what I work with people on. You've got to become very aware of what is making you feel bad, because these are the triggers. And as I say, they can be conversations, they can be relationships, they can be not just your marriage relationship, but they can be business relationships or employees or your employers. They can be social situations. They can be, as I said, conversations. They can be other people. They can be ideas that you have in your head. All of these things are triggering subconscious fears. And when they do, you're finished. You're
Hmm.
locked into the wrong part of your brain. So all you need to do is start to systematically, and it just eliminate these triggers from your life. And all that comes down to is an understanding of how you work and developing new habits.
Yeah, for sure. I agree, and thank you so much for all of that, Liam. I really appreciate everything you've shared, including your own story. Now, for listeners that do want to find your work or get a hold of you, what are some ways they can do that?
If they'd like to learn more about the four-part brain model and how we're designed to work and how to eliminate these triggers so that you actually naturally attract success, biological success, rather than just continue this struggle, problem, stress way of doing it, it's all on my website, which is liamnaden.com. And I've got lots of things there. I've got my own podcast, Let Yourself Off the Hook, it's called, and also a webinar presentation, a mini course about how you can unlock the success brain in quite simple ways. It's all on my website, liamnaden.com.
Awesome. And anything else you want to add that we didn't touch on today? I know we covered quite a bit, but if there's anything else you wanted to add,
No,
welcome
not
that.
really. Just that I think the most important thing to realize is this is not a spiritual thing that I'm talking about. It has a spiritual component, definitely. But we're talking about biology here, science. This is just, when you cut your finger, you know there is a natural healing process that takes place, that there's some intelligence, there's an infinite intelligence that goes to work to heal your finger. You don't need to focus on it, worry about it, do any strategy. I mean, obviously allow it to heal. You don't need to worry about that. It will happen naturally. And what I'm talking about, how your brain works to achieve the state of homeostasis, being in the flow, being the best that you can be, this is a natural process as well. And the fact that 99% of people don't do it this way doesn't get away from the truth that this is the way it works. So that's all you need to do, is start to understand and live naturally, and then you're going to live your natural best life. It purely is biology.
Mm. Well said. Thank you so much, Liam. I really appreciated this conversation, and it was great to talk to you and learn about your story.
Thanks very much for having me, Furkan. It's been really enjoyable for me too.